You are not going to want to miss this next conversation. We have an amazing group of leaders here from Twitter to talk about their company's journey to decentralizing and diversifying its workforce. I'm excited to introduce Maisha Gray Diggs, the Senior Director of Talent Acquisition, who's ensuring that inclusion is happening in all of Twitter's recruitment efforts. Samir Pangarkar is the Director of Global Workplace Strategy, Design, Construction, and Audiovisual on the Real Estate and Workplace team, who focuses on creating workplace experiences that allow employees to love where they work, whether they work at home, in an office, or really anywhere in between. And Julie Steele is the Director of Global Internal Communications, who's led the company through several culture shifts, including Twitter's most recent pivot to hybrid work and decentralization. The Twitter team is joining GitLab's head of remote, Darren Murph, on the stage. So get ready to learn how Twitter's empowering a company culture that really gives its employees the flexibility and the autonomy to choose where and how they work.
We have a phenomenal panel in store, truly a delight for me to host. Twitter, thank you for your contributions and sharing your genius with the world. And for those tuning in, thank you. You are in for a treat. 2020 forever challenged and changed the way that we work. And Twitter was among the first to embrace this change and pivot to all remote work. I'd love for you to walk us through how you did that successfully so early on. Samir, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Darren. Great to be here. I think what's really interesting about Twitter is we were actually on a journey starting 2018 to really think about distributing our workforce and really enabling, work from home and working from different locations. So we were as set up as you can be for a pandemic to really springboard into that. We started in 2018 a flexible work program that allowed employees to think about transferring to different locations or going to full-time work from home. And it allowed us to transition quickly. We had hiccups like everyone, but I think we were well ahead of us being able to do that. And I think it was allowed us to be as successful as we have.
Julie, anything to add there?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Darren. Very excited to be here as well. At Twitter, we are a very people-focused culture. And, I think when you ask any of our employees what they love about Twitter, they always say it's the people, it's the other tweeps. And yet we call ourselves tweeps. So one thing that we really thought was important at the very beginning of the pandemic was to maintain those connections and the relationships that our people had with one another and really make sure that we understood what our tweeps needed from us and what support we could provide. So we actually doubled the amount of employee engagement surveys that we normally do just to have that communication with our people and make sure we know how they're feeling. We also really wanted to look holistically at all of our events across the company, everything from onboarding to trainings to our company meetings, and really make sure that we're optimizing for that virtual experience at every turn.
Maisha, what changed in your world?
Well, a lot. Thanks, Darren, for having me. As you think about moving a global workforce to fully remote, it's a challenge. And we had to support our people. These were very unprecedented times. We'd never seen anything like this before. And we really wanted to double down and make sure that we supported our tweets needs. And we had to evolve and change our policies and our benefits and continue to reevaluate them. Things like reimbursements for employee productivity with them working from home, different benefits, health, mental and physical health benefits, more days of rest. A lot of us were doing a lot of things and not just working. And we had to explore ways to support caregivers like myself who were navigating a new reality. And in my world, the talent acquisition world, we had to figure out how we hired people that we never met, but also how we onboarded them. And we did that in a fully remote way in what we call our flight school. And we took it virtual very quickly.
Flight school. So I've heard at Twitter that everything is bird related, and that proves true there. I dig it. So look, we're starting to see what I'm coining a return to a new equilibrium. I don't think it's quite normal, but it is something different, and there is some equalization that's happening. So, what do you all think is Twitter's biggest opportunity when it comes to being a leader in the future of work? Quite a lot of other companies are looking to teams like ours to create a blueprint for their own future. Maisha, let's start with you.
We've been very self-reflective, as Samir said, that, we got some things right and we stumbled on some others. And so we see our biggest opportunity as continuing to innovate, on new approaches, on how we support these teams that are distributed in many places, and how we make them more efficient than we were when we were co-located in the same location. I think, given Twitter's policies and our stance in IND, we really want to promote inclusivity in the workplace, regardless of where you are. And we want that to be the same, wherever you work. And this includes our leadership roles, right? We want to make sure that they're distributed, right, outside of just the US, to better reflect the teams that we're building globally. Like I said, we've got very aggressive diversity goals that have never been reached in tech. And so we want to continue to attract and retain top talent. And, not being limited to a certain location allows us to do that. And we've also set goals around our impact, in the future of work. I love the folks that I partner with as we continue to build playbooks that we share. We're very open about sharing and learning with others, on how to successfully distribute teams, how to have an inclusive workforce. And we hope other companies can follow us and also share with us what they're doing.
Yeah, and I'd say you're also living these new ideals. In fact, Julie's background looks very different than the prep call. And it turns out she's in an entirely different state. So what do you have to add there, Julie?
Yeah. I mean, I just feel so fortunate to work at Twitter and have an employer that's so flexible and really, puts people first to work where we need to or where we want to and where we can be most productive. So actually over the weekend, my husband and I relocated from the Bay Area to Texas, which is home for us. And just having a front row seat to all of the work that's happening at Twitter to really make sure our people are supported, as Maisha said, wherever they work. I felt really confident in making that decision. And, I guess if the head of internal communications can do it, really anybody can do it at Twitter.
Samir, I have to imagine your world has been most rocked by all of this. So where has your focus been, if you would say one or a few places?
Yeah, and just to add to actually what Julie just said, I'm normally based in the Bay Area, but I've been in Santa Barbara for a few weeks to get a change of scenery for my son, who's almost 3, and we don't have much space in the city. And it was really tough for us to take him out and with all the stresses of the pandemic and whatnot. So just the flexibility to be able to come down here, still do my job in a very meaningful way has meant a lot to me and my family. And for our real estate and workplace team, I think what's really been incredible is last year, not actually even coincide with the pandemic, the real estate and workplace team moved over to the people team because we felt there were a lot of synergies in what we do in providing the office experience. And with the company's move to being more, fully work from home, we actually took on remote experience. And so we have been thinking about constantly over the past 18 months as we knew offices would start to reopen, what's that experience going to be like, both returning to the office, but for those folks that either don't feel safe to do so yet or maybe never want to go back to an office. And so we've been really thinking through that. We've also expanded through the flexible work program and through the work the company has done, all the different locations we can have employees work from. We're pretty much set up across the United States. We've been expanding internationally. And so that really allows us to drive to allowing employees the flexibility and choice in where they live. And it allows folks like Maisha to really tap into the talent market around the world and not be driven by just one location or two. The last point I'd say is location doesn't mean office. Because we're so focused on, full-time, work from home and other avenues in which people can be hybrid, a location may just be the ability for us to hire and employ people in a certain country or city.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a few themes come to light here. And one is leaning into flexibility, and the other is focusing on location and not office. Kind of the global narrative is you either work from home or you work from the office. But what I'm hearing here is there's actually a lot more choice and there's a lot of opportunity if you embrace that choice. And speaking of, we are seeing a lot of companies ask or persuade, or in some cases force their employees back into whatever their office is, their physical headquarters. Uh, Share some examples of what Twitter is thinking about as it looks at reopening its spaces. I say that intentionally. I know we had talked about this, but reopening the spaces instead of returning to work or returning to the office, because language is really important on this front. Samir, I'll let you start this one.
Yeah, we are focused on allowing employees to make that choice. I think Twitter as a global company also recognizes that the pandemic is not over and it's in various stages around the world. And so it's really important for us to, one, lead with that empathy, lead with that flexibility and choice. And the choice to return to an office is the employees, not, we're not asking or forcing anyone to come back. And some folks may be in a location where it is safe to go back and they still don't want to go back. And that's perfectly fine. And that's what we're really focused on, that flexibility and choice. And I think, in the U.S., starting in Q3, we're going to look at opening some of our offices. Really interesting in APAC, in the Asia Pacific region, both Singapore and Sydney had opened, and unfortunately, based on some government guidelines, we've actually had to close them. And so I think that's why we're so focused on allowing people to work anywhere with flexibility and choice, because we're going to be in this for a while longer as a global company.
Just incredible to see the passion in your voice and leaning into opportunity instead of fear. Instead of like, we're being forced to do this, it's a golden opportunity to reshape how we think about it. And I just want to reiterate that for those listening, that there really is a ton of value in breaking down those fear-based walls and looking at it through the lens of opportunity. And I've also advised leaders, Julie, this will pertain to you, that so much of this is about changing workflows, but it's just as much about storytelling and making sure that the messaging is there so that people who are part of the change and are part of history being written and as it evolves beneath their feet, they have a firm understanding of what the strategy is and understanding that this is a journey of iteration. So talk a bit about that for leaders who may be struggling with the messaging front.
Absolutely. And this is new for all of us and truly unprecedented times. I know we say that a lot, but just as when we sent everybody home and we went to fully remote, now that we're reopening offices, I think, communication is so important. And as you said, the messaging and storytelling, we want to make sure that we're very comprehensive and that we're thinking about our employees' needs. So what questions will they have? What concerns will they have? How do we make sure we give them enough time to really feel comfortable and make that decision, as Samir said, what works best for you and where do you want to be based? So we really want to make sure that we're clear in our messaging, that we're really painting the picture for our employees to let them know where we stand and give them that choice and flexibility. I also think this is an inflection point for the company too. So just as much as we're communicating health and safety guidelines, we're also taking this opportunity to look at how we work as a company with this new day of hybrid work and folks in the office and at home. So not just, what to do to be safe or what your setup looks like, but how do we make decisions as a company now in this new world? How do we manage a project? So really taking this opportunity to look holistically at not just the office part of things and COVID, but also who we are and how we work together. So I think the messaging has to incorporate all of that.
Maisha, I feel like you're at the tip of the spear when it comes to opportunity here. I actually joked with a recruiter that a lot has changed, like the first interaction between a candidate and an employer isn't one about how you have to uproot your family potentially just to be involved with the company. So what does that look like from a talent acquisition standpoint?
These are fun times, Darren. I think as much as, it is difficult when the world is your oyster, your talent pool is bigger. It really is people that drives our recruiting strategy, not the physical space. Although Samir and the REW team do a phenomenal job at cultivating, what that physical space looks like. But I think we have to sell, Twitter and the opportunities much different than we did 18 months ago. And I appreciate all the work that our internal comms team and the REW teams do to help make our job easier. Right? People see, how folks are talking about Twitter. They see that we were one of the first companies to say you never have to come back to a physical space. And when that happened, so many people came to us, and it's easier for us to talk about the benefits and the people first culture because they see it, right? Our brand is stronger than it's ever been. And so we definitely have a volume problem, which isn't really a problem. So like we want as many people who want to work wherever they're best to join us here at Twitter.
Yeah, I want all of the talent leaders out there to rewind that and really hear that optionality and flexibility is going to be the gold standard going forward. And for organizations that choose a different path, now you're up against a lot of organizations that have a more open and flexible approach to work. And I think it's long overdue and much appreciated. So I want to dive into what Twitter is looking at in terms of its own workforce. What's changing? Where do you see the future of work impacting your own tweets? And how do you ensure that employees continue to receive equal opportunities across the workplace? Maisha, let's start with you.
We, as Julie talked about, are surveying our tweets, to find out who wants to come back to an office. And I think we'll be in this hybrid situation. It will be the norm. It'll be more common than not that we will have folks that choose to be remote and folks that come back into an office, whether it's 5 days or 2 days or 1 day. And I think that's where we are very focused on the people team is on the entire employee experience, and how do we level the playing field for all of our employees. I think gone are the days of kind of the water cooler conversations or let's grab a huddle room. We really need to be intentional about making sure that folks get the same information, that they feel a sense of belonging, they're not missing out on things, whether they're in a different time zone, whether they're in a different location. So there's going to be some work for us as leaders on how do we create that sense of belonging. And hybrid is unconventional. We have to think about belonging very differently than we did before, and break down silos. I think some of the work that Julie's team does is so powerful because words are powerful and how you talk about it and how you describe it is so important to realizing something different and breaking down these silos, being purposeful about, creating the future of work.
Yeah, what I love about that is TLDR is, look, not everyone has the answers. All of the answers don't exist yet. But the two themes I heard there were intentionality, so be intentional about it. And you alluded to transparency and the importance of it. And I want Julie to talk to that, especially from a comms perspective.
Definitely. Yeah, transparency is really core to our internal communication strategy. And we do want to make sure that everyone across the company knows where we stand and, what we're working on when it comes to hybrid work. Sometimes that means bringing our employees along on the journey and on the development, asking for feedback along the way and checking everyone's pulse of how things are working. Leadership is such a key part of our internal communication strategy as well, and giving managers and leaders the tools to really manage their team and get used to this new way of working. They might have tweaks in different time zones and never had to do that before. They might have folks working different hours or a different circumstance. So really making sure that we're clear and giving managers those tools. One thing that we like to do is team working agreements. So as managers working with your team, figuring out what channels we use to communicate, hours, things like that. And also really leaning into asynchronous work. That's a huge focus for us right now as we enter this hybrid world. How do we make decisions and manage projects without having a meeting and without doing that quick sync, as you said, Maisha. So, providing those tools, resources, and asking for feedback along the way is really critical from a comm standpoint.
Yeah, so letting go a lot of the office first mentalities and workflows is key to doing things differently. It's going to be really hard to move into a new era with doing things the old way. Samir, what does equitability look like from your perspective and the work you're engaged in?
Yeah, I think it's rethinking about how we use office space. I think it'll be critical moving forward for us. We're doing work right now to really think about what is the meaning of an office. If we're tapping into this individual choice and flexibility, what does the office provide? And for each person, that's actually something completely different. Whether that's focus space because at home they have kids or other types of distractions, or maybe purposefully we want to meet up with someone and collaborate, or maybe I just need a space with some extra tools to help me collaborate with others around the office and around the world. And we know that socialization is an important aspect for Twitter and for any company. And so we feel that it's important for the office to be set up to support those. But what's important is when we set it up, we don't allow for unequitable experiences to occur for those that aren't there. And so what are those behaviors and norms in about how we're working that we want to make sure our employees are thinking about, our tweets are thinking about when they're in the office? I think the other thing is that, some of the maybe perks and things you used to get in the office, we want to relook at all of that, right? What is the benefit to every single employee, and how can we best support them in the choices they make and where and how they want to work? And finally, I'd say one thing for folks to really consider is how dependent is your culture on the office itself? I think what was really amazing to see, as someone who has designed most of our Twitter offices, when we went fully remote, our culture thrived. And I think that's because the office amplified the culture of our people. It did not create it. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand, for especially those that are maybe considering making people come back to the office because they perceive that as creating the culture, when it's in fact all these other things that we're talking about: the people, the way you communicate, how and where you work.
That's so key. I've said that culture is really just the barometer of how well your values are adhered to. It doesn't have a lot to do with your building. And if your building is more important than the values, then maybe there's a deeper, more systemic issue. And so this is an opportunity to kind of look introspectively at the foundational elements of the company. So love that example. So I want to talk a bit about language. As an editorialist, this is always a fun topic for me. So Julie and I can geek out on this. But we've talked about remote, hybrid, all remote, distributed. This is an interesting time for the terms that we use to describe whatever future we're walking into. So how is Twitter looking at terminology and things that are related to that when you're conveying the message, both to your tweets as well as the broader world?
Definitely. Yeah. I think the words that we use, like you said, Dan, are so powerful. I think the words remote even kind of have a connotation, right? It kind of implies that you're away from the center of gravity. You're remote, you're far away. We don't want anyone to feel that way. We want everyone to have those equal opportunities, feel like they're on the level playing field. And so a lot of work is happening right now to think about how do we refer to folks who are working from home full time, and maybe that's just that, tweets who are working from home full time. Same with, returning to the office. Again, subconsciously, returning to the office might kind of imply that that's the expectation. And of course, it's definitely not. We want people to choose what works best for them. So even in our comms, we like to say we're reopening the office. We're not necessarily returning to the office. So it's those little details that kind of set the tone for our communications. And I think it's definitely powerful and something we pay a lot of attention to.
Such good stuff. Shockingly, we are coming up on the end of our time here. So I always like to end with a forward-looking question. And so this is your opportunity to add any last thoughts that you want the audience to know, but also give us a glimpse into what is beyond right now. So we've certainly managed through a lot of changes in the past year, but where do each of you see Twitter being in 5 or 10 years related to work? So this is an open discussion. We'll start with Maisha.
I see us as still being flexible. I think that was one of the things that attracted me. There was, flexibility when I joined, and even more now. And as Samir and Julie talked about not being in the Bay Area, I'm also in Ohio. For a few days, I took my family. My kids also needed a change of scenery. So I see us getting even more flexible, because that's going to be crucial to attracting talent and also retaining talent.
Julie, what about you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I look forward to the world where, it really doesn't matter where you are or when you work or where you work, that we're all just in it together and we're all one team. I think that would be great to be able to see. And right now, a lot of attention is being paid to those changes. But I think in the future, it will probably be a non-issue. Another thing, that I was thinking about too was just around some of the lessons learned from working from home that we can apply to the future. One example of that is our company-wide all hands meetings. Those fundamentally changed while we were all working from home, and went to an event where we had actually only 3 offices where we could host the meeting, and you had to fly people in to present at the meeting, to now fully virtual. We're using Slack for real-time engagement and Q&A. There are things like that even as we reopen offices, we're going to take those best practices and lessons learned and apply that. I think we're going to learn so much over time, and 5 to 10 years, there's going to be so many of those lessons learned that we can apply. So, I can't wait to see how Twitter evolves from here.
Samir, bring us home. What's the future you want to see?
Yeah, I guess I'd end with love where you work, wherever you work. And I think that kind of sums up everything they said. And I hope, what Twitter is leading on, both with our strategy around allowing people the flexibility and choice, and also our commitments to inclusion and diversity, that, other companies can follow our model and they find success in it, and they find that they are able to increase their value in their company and value propositions for their employees.
Love it. Thank you all so much for sharing your genius and your passion with us today. For those watching, check out Twitter's Twitter handle, of course, for more of what they are doing, and keep an eye on their blog as well. They're being very kind to share a lot of what they're doing in public so that the rest of us can benefit from it. Thanks for tuning in. Be well.